and we will move forward and evaluate the case at that time. At the moment, we are, evaluating what the pipeline company filed last week, and hopeful that the appeals court single justice will dismiss that petition and that the stay will remain in force, so that the legislature still has a chance to do what we asked the court to do, which was to give it that chance to act on that bill if it so chose, and we'll be looking at that later this summer.
Does everybody kind of understand, just in case there are people, I think probably everyone here is just as expert as we are, but Article 97 is a protection that's put in place for conservation land. So once land is protected by Article 97 in Massachusetts, it can't come out of that protection without a 2/3 roll call vote of the legislature. So, for example, in the Connecticut expansion pipeline case, when Kinder Morgan was seeking to get that approval, it approached the legislature engaged in its typical process, seeking information from Kinder Morgan about pipeline. Kinder Morgan actually didn't respond to the information requests, but Kinder Morgan had been clear through that process, at least initially, that it did intend to comply with Massachusetts law and seek that vote, yay or nay, on whether the land could be used for this non-conservation purpose. So that vote has not happened. So it was very important to us, and I think the judge heard us on that before Kinder Morgan gets to come in and take possession of that land, the legislature in Massachusetts needs to have the opportunity to fulfill its constitutional obligation and take a vote on it. That's why the judge gave some additional time for that process to come to its full completion. Senator, did you have a question?
Yeah, actually, comment about all the gas leaks we have and why aren't they being repaired first before they, if you're talking about repairing the gas leaks, the case decision just came down that says Massachusetts isn't doing enough to reduce its carbon emission.
Yeah, the Kane case.
How does that play into this? Does the expansion of the gas pipeline, does that help us or hurt us?
So let me just begin awkwardly by saying the two of the people on the panel, Christoph and myself, are both recused. We've been recused from that. Our office defended DEP in the Kane matter. So when CLF and the other parties sued DEP for failing to implement the Global Warming Solutions Act, Christoph and I both used to work for Conservation Law Foundation, so we did not participate in that case, and we can't comment on it here, but there are others at the table who can, so I'm going to turn it to Rebecca.
I guess it's not really a legal argument, but more the environmental impact. Expanding the infrastructure, does that help with gas, help us with the CO2 emissions or hurt us?
No, it's not carbon. First of all, you're talking about VOCs, they're called volatile organic compounds. That's what natural gas emits. It doesn't emit carbon, it emits volatile organic compounds. Get it straight.
Thank you.
So natural gas is primary component is methane, which is 1 carbon molecule and 4 hydrogen molecules.
So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about how we are going to comply with that case. I think it's a real opportunity for all of us to be thinking about different ways that we can make sure that we can comply with the court's order. And one of those ways is to think about reducing the methane of gas leaks. So that is on the table as an option. As you know better than probably the rest of us do, there are several bills out there right now in the legislature about gas leak reduction. Due to many people here, and I'm sure other places, recently there was a bill passed by the legislature that requires the utilities to repair and replace their leak-prone pipe over a certain period of time. So they all now have plans for doing that. They come into the DPU every year now. They come in and they say what pipes they are going to replace, and they are supposed to pick the ones that are the worst and the oldest and the most leak prone, and they are repairing and replacing those on a schedule that's at the DPU. Some of the leaks that you're talking about are more, the leaks that they are focusing on with the leak-prone pipes, the leaky pipes, are mostly the bigger ones. Whenever there's 3 categories of leaks, whenever there's a category 1 leak, that means that's an emergency, period. Nothing they have to fix immediately. That's what the law requires right now. there was a new law that was passed last session, I think, that does talk about these three categories. So the first one is you gotta fix it right away. The second one is you need to fix within either 6 months or a year, depending on what kind of pipe it is. And the third one is that they need to fix within another period of time, and I'm skipping, my memory skipping what exactly it is. But all of the utilities now are required to file at the DPU a list of all their leaks and a list of what kind of leak they are, the category of leak, and when they intend to repair them. So we have made some progress in this area. I think activists have really been helpful in helping things move along. There's more work to be done, but I do think that we are moving in the right direction in getting to this issue.
But the question about whether or not laying new gas infrastructure contributes to increased greenhouse gas emission or lessens it, I'm not sure.
It would impact.
Well, if it was a sealed system, it
Well,
wouldn't.
I mean,
but
it also
that's
depends,
not
right?
what
I
we're
mean,
dealing
if
with.
you
We're dealing
are,
with a leaky
if you
system.
are repairing and replacing, right? So
Yeah.
you're taking one leaky pipe out and putting in a non-leaky pipe, then you would,
Then the new one, the Spectra, the
right, yes, yes. But
Yes.
one thing I do want to mention so that people understand the difference. So there are two different kinds of pipes, right? There are pipes that are run by your distribution company, and those are the ones that we have control over here in Massachusetts, that we're talking about having these three categories of leaks, and this is what the DPU regulates. But then there is the other category of pipeline, which is what you're talking about, which is the NED pipeline, the Access Northeast pipeline, the ones that are regulated by FERC. Those we, in Massachusetts, do not have jurisdiction over the leaks in those pipelines. So that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and if people are interested some more on the particular question of whether the large natural gas pipeline expansions that have been proposed contribute to greenhouse gas emissions, do look at the study that was done for our office by Analysis Group. We looked carefully at that issue. We wanted to understand impacts on pricing, whether the argument that it was needed for electric reliability was accurate, and we also wanted to understand what the carbon emission impact was going to be. So from a fossil standpoint, all of the fossil solutions that we looked at when we compared different solutions for potentially meeting a need out 15 years from now were the worst from a greenhouse gas standpoint. So whether you're talking about sticking with dual fuel units, whether you're talking about LNG, kept us pretty neutral if I remember correctly, but when you're talking about the pipeline solutions, they actually increase greenhouse gas emissions. And greenhouse gas emissions from pipelines being primarily methane. So that's, an interesting thing to think about in terms of what we're trying to do with Clean Power Plan. In fact, if we had a whiteboard, I would draw this for you, but we don't, but you can kind of imagine the line. When we first did this projection, it was before the announcement that Pilgrim was going to retire. So we were looking at, we extrapolated the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative cap out beyond 2020. And we looked at the comparison of which of those alternatives would help us achieve our goals, both under RGGI, that's our regional power sector greenhouse gas emissions cap that we do with nine or so other states, and under the federal Clean Power Plan. And it was pretty clear that we were going to do fairly well. But when Pilgrim comes offline, because, setting aside all the other problems with Pilgrim, it does produce CO2-free electricity. Once you take that offline and we redid the calculation, we totally blow our ability to meet the RGGI greenhouse gas emissions cap and the federal Clean Power Plan cap we also don't satisfy. So the things that start to get us to meeting those goals are really deep emissions cuts. And they are things like I forget who talked about it over here in the energy legislation. So we have some things in there like clean offshore wind. We've been a broken record on energy efficiency. But those are the kinds of things that really help us get to this goal. So there are lots of, that was a bad explanation, there are lots of good graphs and an infographic associated with reports. So this is something you're interested in, take a look at it.
That's on our website too.
Pipeline, you've been trying to get in there. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Madeline Champagne, and I'm from Foxborough. And I just wanted to speak about 4 of the 9 towns in the Q1 loop of the proposed pipeline. In Walpole, the pipeline would run alongside the existing pipeline close to the town municipal wells. The Board of Selectmen has passed a motion to strongly oppose having a gas pipeline within a 400-foot radius of the town's aquifer, and have asked Spectra to design a new route, which will cut through the town forest, which just celebrated its 100th anniversary. In Sharon, the proposed pipeline construction will destroy an area of the very active Mass Audubon Moose Hill Wildlife Sanctuary, and a daycare, preschool facility, and Jewish temple are in the evacuation zone. In Canton, the proposed pipeline passes through Greenbrook Apartments and the Cobb's Corner Shopping Mall. In Stoughton, there are hundreds of condominiums in the Copperwood complex, and they are on either side of the proposed pipeline, not far from the humming high-tension wires. There's a strip of recreational green space, basketball court, tennis court, children's playground right there. When a Spectra representative was questioned about not having the usual space required for the pipeline construction, he said, well, we'll have to put it closer than we usually do. Most of the residents do not know about the proposed pipeline, and it seems that the management doesn't want to inform them. On the positive side, strong citizen groups have been formed in opposition to the proposed pipeline. The No Sharon Gas Pipeline submitted a resolution which was passed at the Sharon Town meeting, holding the town officials and elected representatives to continuing opposition actions. A public forum was held on April 7th, and Christoph was one of the featured presenters. Thank you. A second batch of 100 lawn signs have been ordered. They are working with Mothers Out Front with the Tag the Leaks campaign. In April, the chairman of the Walpole Board of Selectmen proposed 2 motions which passed, one about the design plan for the pipeline near the wells, and the other to endorse the position of Attorney General Maura Healey that the proposed pipeline is unnecessary. Shortly after that, the No Walpole Gas Pipeline Group was formed. The group was active in public hearings in May and will participate in the People Over Pipeline Walk. The No Canton Gas Pipeline Group has recently been formed. The most frequent statement at the May public hearings, DPU, citing Board FERC, was about the Attorney General's conclusion from the study that no new gas infrastructure is needed, and there are better means to handle the energy requirements. This adamant statement, which demonstrates the organization's responsibility for the overall welfare of Massachusetts citizens, continues to provide a strong foundation for our opposition efforts, and we are confident that the Attorney General organization efforts will prevail. I know we've been asked by opposition groups to urge the Attorney General's office to appeal the Article 97 Otis Forest case. However, with the complexities of the legal system, this may not be the best course, so I'm confident that the best course will be chosen. I would, however, like to ask for another listening session to be scheduled, perhaps in Norfolk at the Massachusetts Audubon Stony Brook Wildlife Sanctuary, or in another location more central to the Q1 Loop towns, so that more of the Q1 Loop citizens would have an opportunity to speak to me. Thank you very much.
So maybe, can we just take maybe 2 or 3 more on pipeline, and then I know we've got several more topics, and I just want to make sure we get some in the back of the park next to me. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. My name is Stephen Dodge. I'm from the South Shore. I have roots in Worcester. I went to school here and spent many years after school in this area, Auburn, Worcester, and Northborough. I'm also going to be a little bit of a skunk at the garden party. I'm director of the Massachusetts Petroleum Council, which is a trade association. And I'm here because I think it's very important to have a little bit of fairness injected in the conversation about pipelines and natural gas infrastructure. And first of all, I understand people's concerns about safety and about siting. They're legitimate, they're honest, they're passionate, and they should be addressed. There's no question about that. But I ask you folks, as part of the Attorney General's office, to make sure that this discussion is surrounded and is based on facts, not fiction. And there's been a lot of misinformation that has surrounded these discussions. When I go to Sharon, and go to a forum, and one of the panelists was there, where there's 250 people in a room, and there's a physician who gets up and says, natural gas pipelines cause cancer. That was a direct quote. That's just blatantly wrong. It's false. And there was no one refuting that. When I go to these forums and I see pictures that are completely unrelated to pipeline issues, that's wrong. When I look at this handout that was handed out here today that says that subsidizing imports, Massachusetts consumers will be paying for these pipelines that will be export gas to Canada and Europe, that is absolutely incorrect. It's just not true. The Spectra proposal is not designed for exports, and it's designed for in-house, in Massachusetts, utilities only. So the discussion really has to be surrounded by facts, and there's been a lot of reference to the AG study, and I just have to put it in reference by saying that there may be 2 studies that I can think of that come to the same conclusion as the Attorney General's studies. But there are 10 more recent studies that come to different conclusions, and some have suggested there are close to 30 studies, if you count them all over the last 10 years, that come to a different conclusion. And those are studies by universities, by think tanks, by environmental groups, by government entities, Harvard Business School, MIT, the National Renewable Energy Laboratories, and the Patrick administration, that have all come to a completely separate conclusion than the Attorney General's conclusion. Which, quite frankly, didn't take into consideration the need for more pipeline capacity by gas utilities. It only focuses on electric power market. And I would suggest, and others have suggested, it does not fully take into consideration costs and affordability. However, there is a line in there that says that increased natural gas supply will reduce costs. Maybe it's 2 lines. As you pointed out, the AG is the consumer's advocate, and I really feel that your office has to take that seriously. You don't have to take it from me or any of these other studies, but you know that the ISO, independent operators of the grid, who are not political, they're funded by our utility bills, has come to a separate conclusion, and they have repeatedly said that in order to maintain reliability and affordability, that the region needs more natural gas supplies. And again, you don't have to take it from me, but there was a recent poll done by the New England Coalition for Affordable Energy. And that is an entity that is made up of the major manufacturing groups here in Massachusetts, utility workers' unions, made up by smaller groups that are business groups like the Mass Restaurant Association. They just released a poll a couple weeks ago that said that in Massachusetts, these are Massachusetts residents, 55% of Massachusetts residents believe that the cost of energy is higher here than the rest of the country, which it is. 77% are concerned about the affordability of energy, and 61% say that local officials, government officials here in Massachusetts are not doing enough. And these are concerns that are real, and concerns that are based on the fact that we are paying 60% more as utility customers than the rest of the country, and manufacturers are paying 70% more than the rest of the country. There are real concerns when elderly people have to choose between paying prescriptions and paying their utility bill. When manufacturers have to lay off workers, which has happened, cut shifts, or consider closing or moving because of high utility costs. That's the reality. Those are real concerns. I think these people in the state of Massachusetts, the residents of Massachusetts, need real answers. I just ask you to look at the whole picture, not just base policy decisions based on those who are shouting the loudest. So thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen, I just want to thank you very much for those concerns. It's not easy in a room full of people who probably have different views to do it. So I appreciate it. I know we all do, and I know the AG does. That cost issue is really a very important one to us. It was the primary reason why, as a consumer advocate, we thought it was really important to look at it. And I would commend to you, and I'll get your contacts if you would after the meeting, I would commend to you our brief in the matter that's pending before the SJC now. This cost is a really big concern, and for us, thinking about the fact that what we really want to do is preserve our competitive markets, which I know you probably know now are delivering some of the lowest wholesale prices for electricity that we've seen in years. That's front and central for us. We also are very concerned about the climate things. We don't see those as mutually exclusive. So thank you for that. And I did just want to, one factual point I want to make sure, because I don't want anybody to leave the room with the wrong idea. When we did our study, and it is dense, the first thing that analysis group did was, and we had a stakeholder group on which the major utilities participated. So we had Grid in the room and we had Eversource in the room with us. The first thing that we did is we had input from those folks, an analysis group trying to project what the LDC demand was going to be. So what the demand was going to be for gas on the thermal side. And when we had those projections, we then backed that out completely from our estimate of what we thought would be needed for the electric reliability sector. So I just want people to understand that. So 2 points. To Stephen's point, I respectfully, the fact that we didn't address it, we did, and we estimated it, and we took it out of play. Once we knew it, we assumed that much gas would have to be used for those needs. And
We assumed that it would be met.
we assumed that it would be met. And 2, for everybody in the room, the conclusion of the study is a little more nuanced. It isn't no more pipelines. It's we don't need pipelines for electric reliability, because that's been the argument that you hear from a lot of the proponents. So hopefully that clarifies things on both sides, and you've had your hand up for a long time.
Yeah, so my name is Erica Saunders. I live here in Worcester. I think that anybody in this area in Worcester County and Commonwealth who's turned on their TV has heard this argument pretty regularly, from Urbane paper mills to businesses and companies that are in New Bedford or Fall River. The fact of the matter is our kids are getting asthma at a record rate because of active gas leaks. Our energy costs can come down if we remove the net metering cap and actually allow our communities to put community solar projects in, to have Cape Wind go forward. We're shooting ourselves in the foot, and we're talking constantly about pipelines, and we forget that there are energy solutions that the Commonwealth can embrace and make us a progressive leader in this country when it comes to energy and the environment. And it's not just an intersection of energy and our environment, it's an intersection of our jobs, our livelihoods, our health, our well-being. And we don't talk about that. We talk about pipelines, we talk about unions, and it's upsetting because we have kids in our neighborhood who have severe allergic reactions just walking out their door. That's not okay. Our climate is changing and our allergy rates increase. Like, how many people here have their car covered in pollen every single day? That's not okay. And we talk about pipelines as if that's the solution to our energy need. It's not the solution at this point. We have pipelines that exist that we're not fixing. They're killing our trees, which are the lungs of this community. If you walk through Worcester, there's not a lot of trees. So the ones that we have, we need to keep them. And we can't keep them if we're not addressing active gas leaks. We can't keep them if we put a pipeline through our wetlands and through our protected areas all along Worcester. Just so UMass can make sure they have all of their energy, stick some solar panels on that bad boy. You'll have plenty of energy. Like, we are putting our people at risk. We're putting our people within sacrifice zones. It's not okay. And I understand that as a consumer, I can purchase my energy cheaply, and I do. I get my energy from solar panels that we bought into a leasing program. It's great. It's 8 cents per kilowatt, and I am a very happy customer. I would recommend that to anybody. But I am actually, no, until recently, I was the only person in my neighborhood that was allowed to put that on their house. What's that about?
Yeah, really.
If we have a consumer want and a consumer need, why aren't we allowed to do that? So why do we have this cap for net metering? I mean, these are the issues that are happening in Central Mass. And so often, we get ignored out here. And it's not fair. And our families are the ones that are suffering. My pocketbook is the one that's suffering. Our wallets, fair enough. I'm sure you don't have a pocketbook. But that's the problem. And that's when we talk about what's going to be costful for our houses, for our families, it's about making sure that we have a fair, renewable energy, just renewable energy here in the Commonwealth. It's what we deserve. We don't deserve pipelines. We deserve healthy environments. We deserve wetlands. We are the oldest part of this country, and we deserve so much more. So that's all. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're going to take one more question on pipelines. You've had your hand up for a long time, and then we are going to switch topics.
Thank you, I appreciate it. My name is Stuart Loosemore. I work at the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'm their Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy, and I kind of feel like I split the difference between the last two speakers. Chamber certainly sees a renewable future. We look at it from the perspective of our members in cost. It's Steve? Yes. Steve talked about the rising costs for manufacturing and other industries. We see that, we hear that all the time from our members. It's a budget buster for them. We certainly see that there is a renewable future in Massachusetts. We know that that's the way we're going. We also see natural gas as the bridge fuel to get us to that renewable future. So we do support the increase of infrastructure to support the movement of that gas, as well as that gas being the base fuel for that renewable future. There are times where the sun doesn't shine. There are times where the wind doesn't blow.